do you just want to start just by introducing yourself and what you do and you know, what exciting things you've got coming up?
Yeah, cool. So I'm Dr Sarah Mundy. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with children and families. So that's sort of my day job, supporting children with their emotional well-being, parents to sort of make sense of what's going on. And then my night job, as well as having 3 children, is sort of writing books. So I've written a series of books for 2 to 4-year-olds about those things that we find tricky as parents and as children. So separation anxiety, tricky behaviours, bedtime routines, potty training, what else? The arrival of a new sibling and healthy eating. So those are the things that jumped out at me as the things that people struggle with most with their toddlers. And I suppose the reason behind the books is it helps children understand what's going on and what's expected of them, and it helps parents understand where children are coming from, because I think they can be so frustrating that we just want to jump in and sort it out, and then we can't really work out what's going on. So they are books that lift the flaps. So they tell a story about a little bear called Bartley, but under the flaps there are questions for the child about their own experiences and feelings. So the idea is, psychologically, it helps them reflect upon their feelings, it helps them understand their feelings, and the more they do that, the better they are to manage things. And that's what we all want as parents, isn't it? To have preschoolers and toddlers that are feeling happier and more secure and aren't sort of wobbly all the time.
And we've been doing we do a lot of work in the nursery in terms of managing emotions and talking about feelings, and you know, we've done a lot of that, especially over the last 9 months, but in general it comes into the early years curriculum. So and we've sent some things home. I've sent some advice home to parents. So from what age is it important that parents talk about feelings, children's feelings? Is it
from when they're born? From when they're born. I know that sounds crazy because they don't understand language, but what we're trying to do, and when we're talking about it and showing non-verbals at the same time, we're just helping them understand talking about feelings is okay, it's normal, and we're helping them understand what they're feeling. So when there's a baby crying, we automatically say, oh, you're hungry, let me feed you. Or you're tired, let me soothe you. And by doing that, we're giving them the understanding and the language for what they are feeling and what they need, and we're following through with an action to help them with it. So the earlier we can start to do that, the quicker children learn what they're feeling and learn how to solve it. And of course they can't feed themselves when they're a baby, and often not when they're a toddler, but they can learn that other people can help, and then they become able to self-soothe and able to know what they need and able to know that things are predictable and things get solved and problems are solvable the more they have that from an early age. So yeah, always, I mean, I'm a psychologist, but always talk about feelings, and it's something that we don't often do. I think
well, as adults we need to get better at it, don't we? And there's obviously a big focus on that, you know, even more so it's more important. And so the book concentrates a lot on transition into childcare or school, and obviously that's something that we work with from children from an early age in terms of settling in and those kinds of attachments, and parents can get, you know, very worried and upset and feel that it's an indication that they don't like it at the nursery and things. So, you know, what would you say to parents to sort of, I mean, it's expected and we say that, and so it's kind of how can they handle it, because parents take it very, very...
Oh, so I remember that when I first dropped my child off at nursery, it was just hideous. It was just, I was in floods of tears, and then by the 3rd child I was just like, okay, see ya, bye, because I was feeling less anxious, and not surprisingly, he managed much better, because the first thing we have to realise is emotions are contagious, and we push what we're feeling onto our children, whether we want to or not. So that's the first thing that's important to remember. The second thing, and actually, I know we're going to talk about it now, but there is I've got a PDF, a free resource on my website about helping children manage separation anxiety, and part of that's about helping parents manage their separation anxiety. But I've also written a handbook that talks about what separation anxiety is, as well as the other 6 areas I mentioned. So if parents are interested after this, there are more resources they can explore. But yeah, so I suppose what we need to think is, are we being helpful in how we're feeling? Like, it's okay to feel anxious, it's normal, and to feel guilty. Should I be going home to do this? Do I have to go back to work? but we've got to try not to push it onto our children too much, or tell our children, yeah, mummy is feeling a bit sad because she's not going to be with you, but I know it's great for you. You're going to have a fantastic time, but you might be feeling wobbly too. So we need to name our feelings, try and contain our feelings, and then name our children's feelings, because they won't know why they've got a funny tummy or they're screaming their heads off, especially when they're really little. So we need to help them understand it. So for me, that's key. And we talk about naming it to tame it. As soon as a child or an adult knows what they're feeling, they physiologically feel calmer, because we're creatures that sort of need to have things clear and have sense made of things. So when we understand things and when we've got a story about something, we'll still feel anxious. Yes, of course, we're not going to say you feel anxious, right, you're okay now, but we'll know what it is. And when we know what something is, it's easier to manage it, and it's easier to help let other people manage it. But the other thing to remember is it's normal. It is absolutely normal from the age of 6 months to 3. So it's quite a long time to have separation anxiety. And that is because children know that you are their safe adult and they feel happier with you as a parent. But when they learn that other adults are safe and that you trust other adults, like nursery staff, preschool staff, then children are going to be able to manage it much better, and you're going to manage it much better as a parent. So it's normal. It's a sign of a healthy child. Okay, not everybody has separation anxiety. If your child doesn't, that's fine. Don't say you need it. But actually, if they do, it's absolutely normal. It's just how we help them make sense of it and manage it.
Yeah, because I love that emotions are contagious, because we do talk to parents about that, and parents will often worry about, because they have key person, and they worry if that key person is not the one to transfer over. But we're small nurseries, so we have small groups of staff, so all the children know. But the other thing that parents worry about is when children are different, so siblings, they'll often say his brother was never like that, there's something wrong, that he was very, and they worry about that, or the comparison of when I drop them off at grandma's, they don't do this,
Well, and that depends on their relationship with other people, and it depends on their temperament. So of course, going to grandma's, if you see grandma every day and it's only grandma in the house, of course that's going to be easier than going to a bigger nursery with more children, where it's a bit more stimulating and there are more people. So yes, of course it might be a bit trickier, but that doesn't mean we can't expose children to having separations and to trying new things, because they will be learning a huge amount at nursery that they're not learning at grandma's. So it's absolutely fine for children to have a bit of anxiety, and it's fine for them to be different across settings, and it's normal to be different than brothers and sisters. I mean, I've got 2 sisters and we're all completely different, and we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses, but it's okay that they're not the same as siblings, and it's not a reflection of, I think the problem is, as parents, and I certainly feel this, when something's tricky for my child, I start saying, what have I done wrong? Well, and I've got all the theories. So I'm like, how did I mess it up? Was I not available then? Did I not do that? But actually, yeah, there's times we get it wrong. But there's things that our children bring to us that's just who they are. And we've just got to think about each child differently and think about what they need then and there.
Yeah, we talk about that at the nursery, with the staff, in terms of when a child is upset, it's about not doing the complete opposite of then trying to be really happy. It's, to sort of soothe that behaviour. So what's your top tip if a child is really struggling with coming into nursery? We have parents that sneak out, crawl out.
Well, that makes sense, because it's horrible seeing your child distressed, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what we know is that if you don't acknowledge the feeling and validate it, it is a normal feeling. It's not like the child's kicking up a stink to be a pain. It's because they are momentarily feeling anxious because their secure figure is leaving them, and that's quite stressful. But you can't be with your child all the time. We need to work, and there's lots of benefits of being in nursery. So sneaking out, whilst very appealing, I'm just going to the loo, love, and coming back 8 hours later, isn't helpful. Because firstly, it's not acknowledging or validating what the child's feeling. If you're feeling sad or worried, do you want someone to say, come on, chin up, everything's going to be all right? Or do you want someone to say, I can see you're feeling quite stressed, is there anything we can do to help? So just knowing that your parent gets you and that the staff get you, it's not wallowing it, it's just saying, I'm sorry you're feeling really worried, and I do have to leave, I've got to go to work, but I'll be back later. Because if you sneak out, you're sort of deceiving them, aren't they? And then how are they going to trust that you're always going to come back? Or how are they going to trust when you've left the room that you're not going to be back 8 hours later?
Yeah, and we do find that is the worst thing, but it does make the parents feel a little bit better for some that do it, and all the time the children are absolutely fine within a few, you know, once they've gone, but it's hard for parents to understand that.
And I always think it's nice to have a phone call from the nursery saying actually they're okay. I mean, I've got a blog coming out this Saturday that's helping children settle in, helping children with separation anxiety, but for nursery and preschool staff rather than for parents. So there's some ideas in that if you've got some staff watching this as well. But you know, the key thing is that you can't transfer your child to another adult if you don't trust that adult or that setting. Because children they're like little sponges. They pick everything up. So you can have a forced grin but think, oh, I'm not sure I really like this key worker. That's not going to work. So you really need to try and trust the nursery. And if you don't, you need to talk to them, because you sound like you're very open and reflective. I'm sure if a parent came to you and said, I'm really struggling, I don't like the way this is happening, you know, my child's showing a lot of distress, what can we do about it? I'm sure you'd be really open to think about it.
We always say that when parents are coming round, you have to be comfortable with the nursery. Your child will settle and be fine. It's you that needs to, because you need to be happy here with us, because that's the start of how it all goes. And we do, and you know, we do say, you know, just phone us. I mean, most of the time they don't, because they, you know, then they know. But I know, you know, what it's like being at work, you know, worrying and wondering and things. And so the other thing that comes up is when you have a child that has been very happily settled, and then suddenly it's like they realise, you know, and it's often when they're sort of 2, sometimes a bit older as they go into preschool, and they've been at nursery since 6 months old, and then parents suddenly worry that something's happening at nursery, or they're not happy anymore, and there isn't, you know, sometimes there isn't indicators. It's just they just suddenly don't like it. Is there, you know, an explanation?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think there normally is a reason if separation anxiety has reduced or gone, and then it comes up again, because quite often it's when there are changes at home, there are changes at nursery, your child's more tired, a new baby might be coming, you're talking about going to big school, you've got a change of diet, you know, parents are squabbling a bit more, so I think there often is a reason that it comes back up again. But so a lot of it is trying to work out what that reason is. It might not be change in nursery, it might be change at home, and it might be hard to work out what it is. So there's a bit of time thinking about what this is about, but you still would approach it in the same way, which is helping a child understand what they're feeling, saying, oh, I've noticed that you're really struggling again, and you used to be like this, and then it was okay, what's different? You know, and I know what we have to remember is children are much better at understanding language, little children, than expressing. So they understand a lot more than what we realise. And so working that out with them, working it out through play, you know, you could at home or in nursery, you could play through the coming to nursery, and normally there is something that's changed, but it's trying to work out what that is. Yeah.
No, that's, and then as you know, then the biggest they obviously have transitions into rooms, and they tend to go very smoothly. The big transition is school, and it is a big transition because it's a big deal for parents. You go through the stress of finding the right school, and then the application process, and then
mine's starting this year. My last child is starting school in September, and
really,
I hate it.
And then it's appeals, and sometimes for some families there's so much negativity in a way, and stress and then there's the big build-up. We do spend a lot of time in the nursery, and you know, your book will be a great tool for parents and for us at nursery, and so again for parents it's the the tips for them of how to prepare, and how early you know, because we start talking about school quite early with the children, but then it's that thing of, you know, well, you don't want to put too much stress on the fact that, you know, things are changing.
So I suppose there's talking about, firstly, you'd want to be doing it in the same sort of way, parents and school, so that there's some sort of continuity. And there's something about talking about something without making it a big thing. So I've been talking to my son about going to big school for a couple of years, but it's just lighthearted, and then it's what he's expecting. And it's rather than, oh gosh, it's going to be a massive change. And do you know what I mean? So you can start talking about it early, but you don't want to make it a big thing early on, because you want them to still be enjoying their day to day, not being too anxious about it, but just knowing it's normal, it's what's expected, and it's okay if they're feeling a bit worried about it, and you can talk about it, but it's also exciting. So it's starting the conversation as though it's just normal, rather than, oh right, 4 weeks before we're going to tell them that they're, do you know what I mean? So it's sort of preparing them, but not making it a big issue. It's getting that balance. It's lighthearted. It's just, you know, isn't it exciting? You're going to school. Who are you going to be going to school with? You know, I mean, we're lucky in that my son goes from his preschool to his primary school with quite a few people, quite a few of his peers. And I think that makes it easier, because you know, you've got that transition. But as soon as you know the school, it's fine to show them pictures of the school. Because what we know is that the more prepared you are, the more you understand about what's going to happen, the less worrying it's going to be. If you think about it, if you're going into something and you don't know what's going to happen, you're much more anxious than if you've been there before and you know what's going to happen. So it's the same with little children. We need to show them pictures, and I'm sure it's the same sort of thing you do when they're coming to your nursery. You sort of, I don't know, you might send videos or you might send pictures, and then when they get to that big day, there are lots of things you can do to help them. You can take in a transitional object if you're allowed to with COVID, or at least something that you know they're thinking of you. But I think if they've had time at nursery and preschool and they're used to that regular routine, school isn't always as big a jump as we think it is.
No.
But it can feel big if you don't want your little one to be away from you and they've only had a couple of mornings in preschool. That feels like quite big, doesn't it? So it's getting used to that.
Yeah, and we often find the children, we do so much visits and pictures and groupings with their friends and those things, that it's more as a parent, isn't it? I know from being a parent myself, it's, you know, it's more daunting for and then they skip off into the school playground and everything.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on this a couple of times, and it always feels like there's parent bashing around, but you're not parent bashing, but what you're being very clear about is that actually our well-being is directly related, or our children's well-being is directly related to our well-being. So if we can cope with changes, if we feel all right about them, if we trust where our children are going, our children will. Like, you know, so it's almost like the children don't need any work or any support. It's us. If we can manage as parents how we're doing and we can feel okay about it, we will automatically be giving those messages to our children. And what we know is that children and adults, humans, pick up much more quickly on non-verbal than verbal behaviour. So if you think about a child coming into nursery and you go, how lovely to see you, or, oh, it's awful to see you, they'd much prefer the second one, because our non-verbal communication is so much more important than our verbal. So actually what we want to be showing non-verbally is that we're pleased with this decision. And we can only do that if we've got our head around it as parents and that we feel that it's okay. Does that make sense?
There's a parent handbook that you get with the book. So just talk to me.
So this is for, they always come up backwards. My screen's very blurry. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So it's it sort of talks you through each of the areas. So it talks a bit about parenting and brain development, a model that I like called the PACE model, that's about supporting your relationship with your child, helping you build
I've seen that. It's brilliant.
Lovely model. And then it talks a bit about emotional development, encouraging positive behaviour, managing tricky behaviour. So all the things I wish I'd known, I sort of knew about them. I'm a psychologist, but I wanted someone to sort of write them. I mean, we don't have time to read as parents. We don't want people who aren't qualified to just say, this is what I did as a parent, that unsolicited advice. It's really unhelpful. But I also found the expert books just ridiculous, because they would just do this, do that, do this. And it's like, I can't, I'm not perfect. And, you know, and they were also quite focused on behavior rather than emotions. So this is focused on how emotions drive our behavior, how important our relationship is with children, and basically concisely, because we don't have any time to read when we've got little ones sort of not letting us even go to the loo, talking about what we can do. And then it talks about the areas the books cover. There is only the separation anxiety book out now. The others are two are with the illustrator, and the others are on the way. And then at the back it talks about top tips, because I always thought I'd like some tips for bedtimes and healthy eating, and then there's top tips for parents. So yeah, they are maybe the things, you know, we need.
And you get that when you buy the book?
Well, no, at the moment you buy them individually, although I do a bundle on. So if you buy them on Facebook, you get them as a bundle. If you buy them on Amazon, you have to get them separately, because it wouldn't let me do a bundle. But when I have all of the series together, I'll just do them all as a sort of package. But yeah, I mean, it's been great fun writing them, and people, what the feedback from the children, even the little ones. I mean, if people look at my Instagram, there's some videos of little ones looking at them, and they're talking. It's so sweet, talking through the story, opening the flaps, asking themselves questions, and you can sort of see them storying it around their lives and sort of problem solving and thinking about their experiences, and you know, so it's bringing in psychological ideas. It's bringing those top tips from the parenting handbook into the children's stories, so that the children can make sense of things. And I've got the anger one, tricky behaviour one, coming out shortly. So I've shared that with a bit of market research, shared it with some friends. They're like, I had no idea that my son found it so frustrating when I interrupted him, and God, I'd never have thought of that. So it's really interesting. It's a really nice way to questions.
Yeah, really good, that one. So that's like temper tantrums and terrible twos and things.
Yeah. Terrible 2s, 3s, 4s. I've got a terrible 9-year-old still, so yeah. So it's just like yeah. So
I've got teenagers, so you know.
Gosh, the terrible teens.
Yeah. Okay. And so when are they coming out?
So as soon as the bedtime one is illustrated, they'll be going to the printer, so they'll be out in a few months. The next two, bedtime routines and tricky behaviours. So yeah, as soon as possible. It's just pulling it all together.
Well, when we get them in the nursery, we'll video the children and see.
I'd love to see that. Actually, someone did bring hers to nursery, because it became, when I said transitional object, it's basically, I don't know if people know, an object you bring from home that reminds you of home to your new place, and it creates a sense of security. And she started using this book, My Bartley Bear Story About Separation Anxiety, as her transitional object. So they had to keep having it at circle time. And the staff will say, this is amazing, we're learning so much about what the children are feeling, because it just gives that prompt to ask questions in a non-threatening way. Because when you're really heightened, you can't think. So when you're in the full flows of separation anxiety, you can't think about it, or in the full flows of anger, you can't think about it. But actually, when you're reading a fun story about it happening to someone else, then you can start thinking about it yourself without feeling all defensive, and without, as parents, going like, you know, getting pulled back to how you felt and how frustrated you felt. So
yeah.
So yeah,
and that's your Instagram, isn't it? Parenting Through Stories.
Yeah, and then we're on Facebook as well, and the website's Parenting Through Stories. So.
I'm going to put the link for parents to see. Oh, that's fab! That's so good. Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, it was great talking to you. And I'm still thinking about your question about when separation anxiety comes back, and whether it's ever for no reason. And I'm going to keep thinking about that. And if I come up with any other ideas, I'll let you know.
We talked about it, and we did a sleep one, and we talked about that, of how they can be sleeping really well, and then you know,
regressing, yeah.
You know, like you say, it's about working through with parents and trying to eliminate possible things, because there is that kind of thing of like, you know, if there's no changes here, then are there any other changes? And like you say, sometimes even just a change of diet or, you know, those kinds of things, or sleep. It's remembering all of those triggers.
And even if you can't work it out, your child probably doesn't know, you might not know, you can still work with that anxiety, and you can still find lots of ways to manage that anxiety. And the one I've talked about, parents' anxiety, and I've talked about naming it to tame it, but we also need to think about the body and how we help regulate the body. And even little children can do sort of semi-yoga and semi-mindfulness and a bit of breathing. You know, we can do some of that with them, and that just brings down that.
Yeah. And I think it's just remembering with all children, it's the same with sleep, isn't it? It doesn't last forever. You know, although it feels like when you've had 2 or 3 drop-offs that have been particularly difficult, parents can get very stressed by it. And, you know, like we try and explain that it can take some children a very long time. And there are factors like if they're only coming once a week as opposed to every day, they're going to settle a lot quicker, you know, and those things. So there's lots of...
And I think, you know, you need to, there are the children that struggle more, you do need to adapt, and you do need to spend a bit more time thinking with parents and with staff about what will work. And, you know, with all this new pick up and drop off, you need to think about how helpful that is. And I suppose within 6 weeks, you'd want to see it at least, you know, getting easier. You really would. And if not, you'd have to think about really what's working, what's not working, and whether you need to change things. But you need to give it a go for a bit for them to learn that. One thing I will say, if children are really, I know we're going to finish, but I keep thinking of things. This is the last thing I'm going to say. There's a Instagram account called the Psychologist Child, and she's fantastic, and she's just written an ebook called Gently Supporting Successful Separations, and it's in quite a lot of detail. It's quite I think it's really useful. I mean, it does talk at the end about a very intensive method where you basically, parents come into nursery for almost 5 days and sit with the kids, and I think that's just not going to happen anywhere, and I'm not sure it needs to happen. So just bear that in mind, that that's not possible, but I think it's really nicely written. So if parents are wanting more information or wanting to think more specifically about easing separations, then maybe have a look at that. I've only got it here because I'm reviewing it for her, but and you probably can't see that anyway. But
no, that's brilliant. No, that's brilliant. Great. Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to repeat that. Emotions are contagious. That is such I love it.
Well, they actually are physiologically. Look up mirror neurons, it's fascinating. But
yeah, no, that is, and it's just remembering that as well, isn't it? Even with my teenagers, I know I need to sort of, you know, body language, anything doesn't have to be spoken, does it? It can still be.
Exactly.
No, that's fab. Thank you so much, and we shall let you know the success of your book with the children.
I'd love to know. Yeah, do me a little review.
That'd be great. All right. Thank you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.